Some of the things I saw while investigating animal encounters for Animal Quest in 2025, they still stay with me. The wildest, most intense moments of that year are burned into my memory. Let me tell you about October 7th, 2016. The affluent Boulder, Colorado neighborhood of Wildwood Heights was still quiet in the early morning darkness. This upscale residential area, built just 5 years earlier on the edge of the Rocky Mountain foothills, had winding streets lined with modern homes. These homes backed right up against natural open space and wildlife corridors. Lisa Hartwell, a 33-year-old marketing coordinator for a local tech company, was starting her daily 5 a.m. jog through the neighborhood's carefully planned streets. She had moved to Wildwood Heights 2 years earlier, drawn by the promise of mountain living with urban conveniences. Lisa was a dedicated fitness enthusiast, and she maintained a strict exercise schedule, often rising before dawn to complete her 5-mile run before heading to the office. Her morning routine had become sacred to her, a peaceful time to clear her mind while enjoying the crisp mountain air and stunning views. The neighborhood had been experiencing an unusually dry autumn. Drought conditions extended well into what should have been the wet season. Local wildlife officials had issued warnings about increased animal activity in residential areas as deer, elk, and their predators were being forced to venture closer to human settlements in search of water. Several residents had reported mountain lion sightings over the past month, including tracks found in backyards and a large cat spotted near the community's retention pond. Lisa had heard about the wildlife warnings but dismissed them as typical for Colorado mountain living. She continued her early morning runs without changing her route or carrying anything for protection, confident that her familiar neighborhood streets were safe. Mountain lions, also known as cougars or pumas, are North America's second largest wildcat species. Adult males weigh between 115 and 220 pounds. These powerful predators are perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain, possessing incredible stealth, speed, and jumping ability. They can leap vertically up to 15 feet and horizontally up to 45 feet. Mountain lions are primarily ambush hunters, relying on surprise attacks and typically targeting the neck and spine of their prey to deliver quick, fatal bites. As Lisa jogged through the pre-dawn darkness, she was completely unaware that a 140-pound male mountain lion had been stalking a mule deer through the drainage culvert that ran beneath the street she was approaching. Lisa's approach disrupted the carefully planned hunt, startling both the deer and the mountain lion. The deer bolted across the street and disappeared into the darkness, leaving the frustrated predator crouched in the shadows of the concrete drainage opening. The attack came without warning as Lisa passed within 10 feet of the drainage culvert. The 140-pound mountain lion exploded from the shadows with incredible speed, covering the distance between them in a single powerful leap. His massive front paws struck Lisa between the shoulder blades with devastating force, sending her crashing face first onto the asphalt street, his weight driving her to the ground. Lisa's attempts to scream were cut short as the mountain lion's powerful jaws clamped down on the back of her neck. His 4-inch canine teeth punctured through muscle and vertebrae with crushing force. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Lisa's back and shoulders, each swipe opening deep gashes that severed major blood vessels and caused massive tissue damage. The 140-pound cat used his incredible strength to pull Lisa's body across the asphalt and down into the concrete culvert, where the darkness and confined space would provide protection while he fed. Lisa's body was recovered 3 hours later by a joint team of police officers and Colorado Parks and Wildlife personnel. The mountain lion had abandoned his kill when the search teams approached, retreating further into the drainage network that connected to the natural creek system beyond the neighborhood. Lisa had died from massive trauma to her neck and spine. The mountain lion's killing bite proved instantly fatal. The investigation revealed that Lisa had been jogging along her usual route when she inadvertently interrupted the mountain lion's hunt, triggering the attack that cost her life. The mountain lion was tracked and euthanized the following day after being located in the foothills above the neighborhood. Then there was August 19, 2017. When Felicity Grant arrived at Boulder County Open Space in Colorado. This vast wilderness area is known for its rugged terrain and diverse wildlife population. The mountainous region stretches across thousands of acres of dense forest and winding trails, attracting outdoor enthusiasts. However, these same wilderness areas also served as prime habitat for mountain lions and other dangerous predators. Felicity Grant, a 39-year-old fitness influencer from Denver with over 5,000 social media followers, had planned what she called her ultimate wilderness transformation experience. Known for her entitled attitude and belief that her athletic superiority made her exempt from rules, she had already caused multiple confrontations at the park entrance. Her demanding personality became evident when she berated the teenage park attendant for suggesting she read safety guidelines, claiming someone of her fitness level didn't need advice from minimum wage employees. Park Ranger Tom Bradley had attempted to brief Felicity on recent mountain lion activity during her permit application process. The area had experienced multiple cougar sightings over the previous month, including aggressive encounters that resulted in temporary trail close. Felicity became increasingly hostile, interrupting Tom repeatedly. I find myself thinking about the story of Felicity, the influencer who died on Rabbit Ear's Pass Trail. It's a grim reminder of how nature can punish arrogance. She tore down warning signs, blasted loud music, and even carried raw meat in her backpack. She was found 3 days later. Mountain lions are apex predators, perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain. Adult males can reach over 8 feet in length and weigh up to 180 pounds. They can leap 40 feet in a single bound, and their retractable claws up to 4 inches long are designed for gripping prey. Their 4-inch canine teeth are perfectly positioned for delivering fatal neck bites that sever the spinal cord. Felicity started her solo run at 5:30 a.m., choosing the pre-dawn hours to avoid other hikers. The combination of her erratic running, heavy breathing, and the scent of fresh meat created the perfect conditions to attract a hunting mountain lion. A 140-pound male mountain lion had been actively hunting in the area and detected the scent of fresh meat from over a mile away. The cougar stalked Felicity along the ridge, using rocks and trees to remain hidden. As she rounded a bend, the mountain lion positioned itself on a boulder 15 feet above the path. When Felicity passed below, the mountain lion launched itself in an aerial attack. The predator struck from behind with tremendous force, his claws raking down her back. The mountain lion's canine teeth clamped down on the back of Felicity's neck with surgical precision, severing the connection between her brain and body instantly. The bite fractured the vertebrae, causing immediate paralysis. Within 2 minutes, Felicity died from spinal cord severance, blood loss, and suffocation. The mountain lion dragged her body off the trail to feed. It was December 3rd, 2014. Fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the kennels at the county animal shelter. I recall another story, this one about Jennifer Walsh, a 25-year-old veterinary student who volunteered there, believing every animal deserved a second chance. She had a reputation for advocating for the shelter's most difficult cases, gravitating toward the aggressive dogs marked for euthanization. The dog that would cost Jennifer her life was Diesel, a 75-pound pit bull with a scarred muzzle and eyes that seemed to hold years of rage. He'd been surrendered after multiple bite incidents, including an attack on a neighbor's child. The behavioral assessment was decisive. Too dangerous for adoption. Scheduled for euthanization on Monday, Jennifer had been watching Diesel for 3 days, looking for signs of the gentle soul she believed existed beneath his aggressive exterior. She saw him pace restlessly, heard him growl, watched him destroy every toy. But she also noticed what she interpreted as vulnerability, moments when he pressed against the back wall, briefly softening when he thought no one was watching. The shelter's protocol was clear. Dogs like Diesel were never to be handled alone. But Jennifer had convinced herself that Diesel's aggression was fear-based, that he needed one-on-one attention. On that December afternoon, with most staff busy, Jennifer made the decision that would cost her her life. She approached Diesel. I keep thinking about Jennifer, the young woman who dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. Her story is a stark reminder that good intentions aren't always enough. She lost her life because of a tragic misjudgment, a fatal underestimation of a dog named Diesel. Diesel was slated for euthanization, a 75-pound animal with a history of aggression. Jennifer approached his kennel with a slip lead and the key to the isolation room, a small, windowless space used for behavioral evaluations. His reaction was immediate and threatening. His lips pulled back, revealing yellowed teeth. Hackles rose along his neck, and a low growl rumbled from his chest. Every aspect of his body language screamed danger. But Jennifer tragically interpreted these signs as fear rather than aggression. The moment the kennel door opened, Diesel seemed to shift, calculating. He seemed to assess Jennifer's position in the open doorway. This brief hesitation gave Jennifer a false sense of confidence. She slipped the lead around his neck and guided him toward the isolation room. Once inside, Jennifer closed the door and removed Diesel's lead, believing freedom of movement would help him relax. The room was small, just 8 by 10 feet, with concrete walls and nothing but a metal folding chair. Designed for safety, it offered nowhere to run. For several minutes, Diesel stood rigid in the center, his eyes never leaving Jennifer's face. She sat in the chair and began talking to him, her voice gentle and encouraging, completely unaware that she was being evaluated by a predator. The attack came when Jennifer stood and took a step toward Diesel, her hand extended in what she intended as a peaceful gesture. To Diesel, the movement represented a threat requiring immediate action. He launched across the room with explosive force, his jaws targeting Jennifer's throat with precision. Her scream was cut short as Diesel's teeth sank deep into her neck, crushing her windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single bite. His jaws locked onto their target with mechanical efficiency. Jennifer's hands clawed desperately at the dog's head, but Diesel had been bred for combat, his grip unbreakable once engaged. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone while maintaining his hold. Blood sprayed across the concrete walls as Jennifer's struggles grew weaker, her body going into shock from the massive trauma. The attack was swift, brutal, and utterly without mercy. Other volunteers heard Jennifer's initial scream and rushed toward the isolation room, but the heavy door was locked from the inside. By the time they could locate the key and safely enter, Jennifer lay motionless on the concrete floor, her life ebbing away in the pool of blood. Diesel stood over her body, his muzzle stained red, his eyes still burning with the same aggressive intensity. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but Jennifer's injuries were beyond medical intervention. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Her dream of becoming a veterinarian ended. Diesel was immediately sedated and euthanized, his death as swift and clinical as the attack that preceded it. The investigation that followed was thorough but predictable. Jennifer had violated multiple safety protocols, ignored clear warning signs, and placed herself in a situation that experienced professionals would have avoided. The shelter implemented new security measures, including electronic locks on isolation rooms and mandatory buddy systems for all volunteer activities. Jennifer's death became a cautionary tale in veterinary schools across the country. Her family established a scholarship in her name but requested that it go to students studying wildlife conservation rather than domestic animal care. A final acknowledgement that some animals, no matter how much love they're shown, remain fundamentally dangerous. It was April 17, 2018, and the humid Florida air hung heavy over the grounds of Sunshine Primate Sanctuary, a controversial facility that claimed to rescue primates while actually exploiting them for tourist photographs. The 20-acre property housed over 30 primates in substandard conditions, generating revenue through photo sessions that legitimate sanctuaries would never permit. The afternoon sun beat down on concrete enclave where gorillas, chimpanzees, and other primates paced restlessly behind inadequate barriers. Jessica Rodriguez, a 31-year-old veterinary technician from Tampa, had visited the facility with her husband Carlos as part of what she believed was a legitimate conservation effort. Jessica had always been passionate about animal welfare, taking photos of animals throughout her career to document their care and recovery. Her genuine love for animals had driven her to pursue veterinary technology training while working nights to support herself through school. Jessica had dedicated her career to animal welfare, earning her veterinary technology degree through years of hard work and sacrifice. Her passion for primate conservation had led her to volunteer at legitimate sanctuaries and support organizations working to protect great apes in the wild. Jessica genuinely believed that her visit to Sunshine Primate Sanctuary would help promote conservation efforts through the photo she planned to take. That afternoon, Jessica was participating in what the facility marketed as an educational encounter with King, a 350-pound silverback gorilla who had been acquired from a defunct research facility. The sanctuary's minimal safety measures consisted of a chain-link barrier that separated visitors from the gorilla's enclosure, with no additional protection or supervision from qualified staff. Silverback gorillas are among the most powerful primates on Earth, with adult males weighing up to 400 pounds and possessing the strength of 10 grown men. These magnificent animals are highly intelligent and emotionally complex, but they're also territorial and can become extremely aggressive when they perceive threats to their domain. I've seen the aftermath of encounters with great apes, and it always leaves me shaken. Their strength is almost beyond comprehension. They can shift from calm to violent in an instant. Their hands, they can grip with crushing force. And their jaws, filled with teeth capable of inflicting severe wounds. I remember reading about Jessica, who approached a gorilla enclosure with her camera, hoping to capture images of the animal's intelligence. The gorilla king appeared calm, observing the visitors with what seemed like curiosity. Jessica started taking photographs, excited to share a message of conservation through these portraits. But then came the fatal moment. She reached through the fence to touch King. She thought physical contact would create a more powerful image, that the gorilla's calm demeanor meant friendliness. She didn't realize it was the calculated patience of a territorial animal assessing a potential threat. King's reaction was instantaneous. He grabbed her arm with incredible strength and pulled her against the chain-link fence. Her scream filled the air as his grip tightened with bone-crushing force. People tried to help, but the gorilla's strength was too much. He grabbed her head and shoulders, pulling her harder against the fence. His territorial instincts took over, and he inflicted devastating trauma. Jessica's attempts to break free only seemed to make things worse. Her movements grew weaker as blood loss and injuries overwhelmed her. King's grip never loosened. Within minutes, her struggle ceased. The gorilla maintained his grip on her lifeless form, displaying threatening behavior toward anyone who approached. Emergency responders arrived, but it was too late. Jessica was dead. The investigation revealed the sanctuary was an illegal roadside zoo, exploiting animals and visitors. It was shut down, and King was transferred to an accredited facility. Jessica's death led to enhanced regulations for animal sanctuaries and stricter enforcement of wildlife protection laws. Her family established a foundation to support legitimate primate conservation, ensuring her passion would continue through organizations that truly protect great apes. Then there was the evening of March 18, 2017. In Mountain View Estates, North Carolina. It was the first warm evening of spring. Maria Santos, a 41-year-old single mother and dog walker, was making her rounds through the neighborhood. She'd been a dog walker for 3 years, building a loyal clientele among the affluent homeowners. She often walked multiple dogs at once, managing up to 6 animals while giving each individual attention. The Mountain View Estates development had been carved out of pristine mountain forest, and builders were required to preserve mature trees and maintain natural wildlife corridors. But recent construction had disrupted animal movement patterns, forcing bears, deer, and other wildlife to seek new routes through residential areas. The Wildlife Resources Commission had issued warnings about increased bear activity, especially as animals emerged from winter hibernation. Maria was aware of the warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals. She carried pepper spray and had received training on wildlife encounters. On this particular evening, she was walking 3 large dogs, 2 German shepherds and a golden retriever, when she noticed unusual activity near a row of garbage cans. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, with adult females typically weighing between 200 and 400 pounds, and mother bears with cubs are extremely protective. They will attack any perceived threat to their offspring. I've seen what bears can do when they're surprised or cornered. They can run up to 35 miles per hour, break down doors, overturn cars. Their claws and teeth, devastating. I remember reading about Maria, who approached an intersection one morning and found a 300-pound female black bear with 2 cubs. The mother bear was feeding on discarded food, her cubs playing nearby. Maria, thankfully, began backing away slowly, but the 3 dogs she was walking became agitated, barking aggressively. The mother bear's protective instincts kicked in. She rose to her full height, making aggressive sounds, positioning herself between the dogs and her cubs. Maria tried to retreat, but the dogs continued barking, escalating the situation. The bear charged, covering 30 yards in seconds. Maria, tangled in the leashes, fell onto the asphalt. The dogs scattered, leaving Maria vulnerable. The bear struck her back and shoulders, driving her face into the pavement. Her jaws clamped down on Maria's head and neck. The bear's claws tore across Maria's torso and limbs. Residents heard the commotion and called 911, trying to scare the bear away. The mother bear eventually retreated with her cubs toward the forest, leaving Maria motionless. Paramedics arrived, but it was too late. She had died from massive head and neck trauma. The investigation revealed that improperly secured garbage containers had attracted the bear and her cubs, creating the conditions for that fatal encounter. Wildlife officials determined the bear was acting defensively and relocated her and the cubs to a remote mountain area. Maria's death led to changes in waste management protocols, including bear-proof garbage containers and an early warning system for wildlife sightings. Then there was Rebecca Martinez. It was October 15, 2016, and the Georgia sun was setting over her 10-acre property. The constant barking of 40 rescue dogs echoed across the land. At 34, Rebecca had spent 8 years building her unofficial sanctuary, taking in dogs that other shelters wouldn't touch, the aggressive ones, the biters, the ones marked for euthanization. Her recent divorce had left her financially strained and emotionally isolated, with only her dogs for company on that remote property. Her neighbors had grown used to the noise, though some whispered concerns about the woman who seemed to care more about dangerous animals than her own safety. She rarely left the property anymore, moving between enclos with hands scarred from countless bites. Friends noticed the changes in her. She'd grown thinner, more withdrawn, speaking more about her dogs than anything else. Even the feed delivery drivers had begun leaving supplies at the gate rather than approaching the main compound. The main enclos housed her three largest rescues: Rex, a 90-pound pit bull mix; Titan, an 85-pound Rottweiler cross; and Scar, a 75-pound mixed breed. What Rebecca didn't realize was that these three had been forming an alliance over the past few weeks, establishing a hierarchy that put them at odds with anyone who came between them and food. The warning signs were there. The three dogs had begun sleeping closer together, sharing food bowls and displaying coordinated territorial behavior. They'd started following Rebecca's movements more intently during feeding times, their body language shifting from grateful anticipation to something more predatory. But Rebecca, exhausted from managing 40 animals alone and emotionally invested in seeing progress. I'll never forget the feeling of reading the report. Rebecca lay motionless in the mud, her body broken and torn, surrounded by the scattered kibble that had triggered the attack. For 3 days, her body remained undiscovered on that isolated property. It wasn't until a delivery driver arrived with dog food that they found her. The metallic clanging of kibble buckets. I can only imagine the frenzy that would create. Rebecca had been doing her daily feeding routine. She filled 5 buckets, the sound sending the dogs into a frenzy. The ground was still wet from an afternoon thunderstorm as she approached the main enclos, buckets in hand. The 3 large dogs pressed against the fence, their eyes locked on the food, muscles tense with anticipation. She'd done this thousands of times before, but that night felt different. The air seemed charged with more than just humidity. As she unlatched the gate and stepped into the enclos, her worn boots slipped on the muddy ground. She stumbled, trying to regain her balance, but the weight of the buckets pulled her down. The metal containers crashed, spilling kibble across the wet dirt. Rex was the first to move, but as Rebecca struggled to get back on her feet, something in his demeanor shifted. His eyes, which had been focused on the kibble, now locked onto her. At that moment, she wasn't the woman who had saved him. She was in competition for resources. The attack came without warning. Rex's 90 pounds of muscle slammed into Rebecca's chest, driving her back to the ground. His jaws clamped down on her shoulder, tearing through flesh with devastating force. Her scream pierced the evening air, but there was no one around for miles to hear it. Titan and Scar joined the assault within seconds, their pack instincts overriding years of rehabilitation. Titan's massive jaws found her left arm, shaking violently. Scar circled behind, his teeth sinking into her legs, dragging her further from the gate. Rebecca fought desperately, her free hand clawing at Rex's face, trying to break his grip. But the dogs were in full predatory mode now, their attacks coordinated and relentless. Blood soaked into the muddy ground as they continued their assault, their growls mixing with Rebecca's weakening cries. The feeding frenzy lasted nearly 10 minutes before the dogs finally backed away. Animal control officers found the 3 attacking dogs still in the enclos, showing no signs of continued aggression. Rex, Titan, and Scar were euthanized within hours, along with 12 other dogs deemed too dangerous for relocation. Rebecca's death sparked debates about unlicensed rescue operations. New regulations were implemented, requiring permits for anyone housing more than 10 rescue animals. But for those who knew Rebecca, the rules came too late. Then there was Camille Morel on April 3, 2017, in Thor, France. Inside the Thor Zoo Safari Park, the wolf sector adjacent to the bison paddock meant to mimic the wild stillness of Yellowstone seemed calm. Yet within the shadows of its pines, something alive and waiting stirred, a quiet rhythm of movement that would soon break that silence for good. Camille was 29, a fitness instructor from Versailles who lived by routine. Known among her clients for her precision and self-discipline, she maintained the same training schedule no matter where she was. After 6 months of non-stop classes at her studio, she decided to spend a weekend at the Thori Zoo Safari, one of the few places near Paris offering guests an overnight wilderness immersion without leaving the country. It wasn't her first visit. She'd stayed once before and remembered the tranquility of waking to animal sounds instead of traffic. She booked the chalet not just for rest, but to keep her running habit intact in the open air. To friends, Camille's decision made sense. The park's trails and guest roads were well marked and safe during visiting hours. She'd read the safety pamphlet about restricted areas and believed her familiarity with the grounds made her cautious enough. Her chalet overlooked the fenced wolf sector adjacent to the bison range, a layout designed to reduce mixed-species stress and liability during guest drives. The animals were separated by natural barriers and double fence zones, and guests were told the viewing area was completely secure. Camille trusted the system. Her goal that morning was simple: a quick 2-mile jog before breakfast, the same as she did every morning at home. The zoo's landscape was a strange fusion of natural calm and controlled wilderness, pine trees in neat clusters, sandy trails, and an artificial stream running through the land. At dawn, the service road and the inner track appeared nearly identical, a known issue in drive-through parks where early light flattens contrast. Beyond the chalet's edge stretched a gravel service road used by rangers and tour jeeps. The wolves' territory extended across nearly 20 acres of wooded ground. Gray wolves, the largest of the canids, can weigh over 100 pounds and run up to 35 miles per hour for short bursts. Pack behavior revolves around cooperation and hierarchy. Most attacks on humans occur only when the animals feel threatened, cornered, or see unusual movement that triggers pursuit. In captivity, stress or broken boundaries can alter those instincts. That morning, a scheduled maintenance check had delayed some of the park's early operations. Workers had opened an internal service gate near the chalet to move a small utility vehicle through. Overnight, frost had iced the latch mechanism, preventing full engagement of the double lock, and when one of the workers received a call about a mechanical issue elsewhere, he left under maintenance override without confirming it was secure. The gate's interlock was meant to be re-engaged once staff passed, a step that failed. Around 7 a.m., Camille stepped outside with her phone and a small water bottle. She jogged down the gravel path that bordered the guest area, seeing no posted signs. I still think about Camille sometimes. The zookeeper saw the whole thing unfold from the observation tower, helpless. He radioed for a patrol, but it was too late. Before anyone could respond, the wolves moved. At first, they didn't charge. They just emerged from the trees, low to the ground, tails stiff, heads aligned. Camille slowed, confused, thinking the fence must be nearby. But then they began advancing in a slow, deliberate arc, and something in their posture made her freeze. She turned, saw the empty gravel behind her, and started running. The wolves matched her pace, then accelerated. She broke into a sprint, but her foot caught on the uneven ground near a drainage trench, and she fell hard. Before she could get up, the lead wolf clamped down on her thigh, pulling her backward. Another wolf lunged at her shoulder. Her scream, the report said, carried across the enclosure, high and ragged. The zookeeper sounded the alarm, but the response vehicle was delayed. Within 10 minutes, 2 more wolves had joined, surrounding her as she tried to crawl toward the ditch. The lead wolf released its grip and bit higher, its teeth sinking into her hip. She struck out, scraping the gravel, but another animal bit into her arm, shaking until it tore free. Within moments, she was on her back, thrashing as the pack pulled from opposite sides. She kicked weakly once more, then went still. Rangers arrived in a vehicle within 10 minutes. They found the wolves clustered over Camille's body, heads low. Warning shots scattered the pack. 2 rangers approached while another called for a tranquilizer team. Camille lay on her side, clothing torn, deep bites from shoulder to thigh. 1 ranger checked for a pulse and found none. They covered her with a thermal blanket and secured the area until all 5 wolves were sedated. An autopsy confirmed death by exsanguination, massive blood loss due to multiple deep lacerations and crushing trauma to the limbs. The body was transported under escort. Camille's family filed a civil lawsuit against the Thori Zoo Safari and its parent company, alleging gross negligence and breach of safety protocol. After a year of investigation and hearings, the court ruled in their favor and the park quietly settled without appeal. Following the incident, a criminal negligence inquiry and an independent enclosure audit were conducted. Thori Zoo Safari implemented procedural retrofits, installing interlocks and alarms that trigger if any gate remains unlatched for more than 15 seconds. It was July 22, 2016. The Oklahoma sun beat down on the dusty grounds of Wild Art Big Hat Sanctuary, a privately owned facility nestled among rolling hills 30 miles outside Tulsa. The 50-acre property housed over 20 rescued lions, tigers, and other exotic cats in chain-link enclosure that stretched across the rural landscape. The afternoon air shimmered with heat, and the distant sounds of roaring and pacing echoed from various habitats as the cats sought shade from the oppressive summer temperatures. Ashley Martinez, a 23-year-old college student from Dallas, had discovered the sanctuary through social media while road tripping with her boyfriend Jake through Oklahoma's quirky roadside attractions. Ashley was constantly seeking unique photo opportunities for her personal memories, having grown up taking pictures at every family vacation and special event. Her phone was filled with daredevil shots from cliff edges, abandoned buildings, and extreme sports activities that showcased her fearless personality to friends and family. Ashley had grown up in suburban Dallas as the youngest of three sisters, developing a competitive streak that drove her to constantly push boundaries and seek attention through increasingly dramatic stunts. Her psychology major at Texas Tech University had given her confidence in reading people and situations, but her academic knowledge didn't extend to understanding animal behavior. That afternoon, Ashley and Jake paid the sanctuary's fee for a close encounter experience that promised visitors the chance to observe big cats during feeding demonstrations and educational presentations. The facility operated in a legal gray area, offering interactions that legitimate zoos and accredited sanctuaries would never permit. African lions are apex predators that retain all their wild instincts regardless of human contact or hand-rearing. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds and possess incredible strength, speed, and territorial behaviors that make them extremely dangerous in captivity. Lions are social animals with complex hierarchies, but they view humans as either threats to be eliminated or prey to be consumed. Their powerful jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 650 pounds per square inch, while their razor-sharp claws can inflict fatal wounds with a swipe. I've seen the photos. Ashley, smiling just before everything went wrong. It's a stark reminder that nature, even in captivity, remains untamed. A single moment of misjudgment can erase the line between observer and prey. I remember reading about Ashley, who, during a sanctuary visit, saw her chance for the ultimate selfie. A close-up with Caesar, a 400-pound African lion. She asked her friend to distract the owner while she climbed over the barrier. Caesar was resting about 10 feet away when she climbed over the 4-foot chain-link fence. His eyes followed her, but he didn't seem aggressive at first. As Ashley crouched down, phone in hand, Caesar's demeanor shifted. His ears flattened, his tail twitched. Then, with explosive speed, he attacked. Ashley never stood a chance. Caesar's paws struck her chest, claws tore into her torso, and his jaws clamped down on her neck. The sanctuary owner and Jake ran over, but it was too late. Ashley's movements ceased within minutes. The facility, it turned out, was operating without proper permits and insurance. Caesar was relocated. Ashley's death led to stricter regulations for exotic animal facilities. Then there was Giovanni Russo. May 21, 2018, Gran Paradiso National Park, northern Italy. He was an experienced alpine guide, leading trekking tours with his wife, Elena. They specialized in remote routes, respecting the balance between humans and wildlife. But one night, a small oversight turned deadly. A storage bag left unsealed near the cooking area. Giovanni and Elena were leading a pair of hikers from Milan. One of them had left a pack of trail mix open, and dinner scraps were tossed near the fire pit. Wolves, normally nocturnal and wary of humans, had been venturing closer to camps recently, drawn by the easy access to food. Around 4 a.m., Elena woke to rustling and a low growl. She saw silhouettes clustered around the fire pit, adhering into the food bag. Giovanni grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside alone. The beam caught 3 wolves standing over the scattered wrappers. He shouted and waved his light, but they didn't scatter. One stepped forward, hackles raised. Giovanni shouted again, clapping his hands, closing the distance. The older female lunged, nipping at his forearm. Then a younger one clamped down near his elbow. The bite struck deep, severing tissue. He fell backward, blood pulsing through his injuries. Elena tore from the tent with a burning stick. I've seen reports, chilling reports, of what happens when the wild claims its space back from us. There was the case of Giovanni, for instance. He was in Aosta. Frozen in their shelter, Giovanni's clients saw him collapse. Blood pooled around his collar. Elena screamed, swinging a torch, striking one of the juvenile wolves. It yelped, retreating into the darkness. The rest scattered, vanishing toward the tree line after a final growl. She knelt beside him, pressing her hands to the wound, whispering his name. His chest moved once more, then stopped. Because of the poor signal, one client climbed several meters up a nearby slope to reach coverage and contacted park emergency services. Rangers arrived at the campsite just before sunrise. Giovanni's body remained where it had fallen, partially covered by his wife's jacket. His face was intact, but the left side of his neck showed deep, crushing injuries. Investigators later determined the fatal wound likely occurred as Giovanni twisted while the wolf held his arm, a freak tear along the artery that caused near-instant collapse. Officials ruled the incident a food-provoked escalation involving juveniles, noting that the wolves had been feeding near unsecured rations. A short-term monitoring and deterrence program followed, but no culling was ordered as the pack showed no further boldness toward humans. Giovanni's funeral was held 5 days later in Aosta. Then there's the story of the Lawson family. It was July 15, 2016, when they arrived at the remote Sundarbans National Park in West Bengal, India. The vast mangrove delta stretched endlessly before them, a maze of tidal channels and dense vegetation where the Ganges River meets the Bay of Bengal. Ancient mangrove trees rose from the brackish water, their aerial roots creating an impenetrable network. This UNESCO World Heritage Site harbored one of the world's most dangerous ecosystems, where saltwater crocodiles lurked beneath the surface and venomous snakes coiled in the canopy above. Genevieve Lawson, a 42-year-old real estate agent from London, had insisted on booking the most expensive boat tour package available. Known for her demanding personality and unwillingness to accept limitations, she had already berated their local guide, Ravi, multiple times during the morning briefing. Her husband, David, a 45-year-old investment banker, tried unsuccessfully to moderate her increasingly aggressive behavior. Their teenage children, Emma and Jake, watched uncomfortably as their mother dismissed every safety warning as unnecessary fear-mongering designed to limit their premium experience. Ravi, despite his 15 years of guiding experience in these treacherous waters, found himself intimidated by Genevieve's constant threats of negative reviews and demands for closer wildlife encounters. The motorboat had been equipped with safety barriers specifically to keep tourists safe from the apex predators that ruled this ancient domain. But Genevieve viewed these precautions as obstacles preventing her from capturing the authentic jungle photographs she demanded. The Sundarbans mangroves serve as the exclusive hunting ground for the world's largest population of Bengal tigers, apex predators that have adapted uniquely to this aquatic environment. Unlike their mainland cousins, these tigers are exceptional swimmers and have developed an unusual willingness to hunt humans in water. Weighing up to 400 litre and measuring over 10 feet in length, these magnificent cats possess 4-inch canine teeth, capable of crushing windpipes and delivering fatal wounds within seconds. Their distinctive orange coat with black stripes provides perfect camouflage among the dappled shadows of the mangrove forest, making them virtually invisible as they move silently through the water. During the afternoon tour, their boat approached a narrow channel where Ravi spotted fresh tiger tracks along the muddy shoreline. He immediately cut the engine and whispered for complete silence, explaining that a large male tiger had recently passed through the area. Despite his urgent warnings about remaining in the boat, Genevieve became frustrated with the distance and declared she needed closer photographs. Against all protests from her family and guide, Genevieve stepped over the safety barrier and lowered herself into the chest-deep channel water. The murky tidal water concealed her movements as she waded toward the mangrove shoreline, camera held high above her head. Unknown to the group, a massive 400 lb male Bengal tiger had been resting in the dense vegetation upstream and had detected their boat's engine minutes earlier. Sundarbans tigers are ambush predators that use water as their primary hunting medium, approaching prey with complete silence while swimming. This particular male had successfully killed humans before and recognized the splashing sounds of vulnerable prey entering his territory. The tiger slipped into the water upstream and began swimming toward Genevieve with only its eyes and nose visible above the surface. When Genevieve reached the muddy shoreline and began photographing tiger tracks, she remained completely unaware of the approaching predator. The tiger closed the final 20 ft underwater, using its powerful limbs to propel itself through the murky channel with deadly precision. The attack erupted from the water with explosive violence. The massive tiger surfaced directly behind Genevieve and immediately clamped its powerful jaws around her throat from behind. The 4-inch canine teeth punctured through her neck muscles and crushed her windpipe with over 1,000 danalb of bite force. The tiger's signature killing technique involved suffocating prey by crushing the throat, and the massive prez collapsed her airway instantly. Genevieve's body went rigid as the tiger's teeth severed major blood vessels in her neck, causing massive internal bleeding. The predator's powerful forelimbs wrapped around her torso, while its hind legs found purchase on her lower body, holding her in an inescapable grip. The tiger then began its drowning technique, pulling her backward into deeper water while maintaining its cruel grip. There are some silences that speak louder than any sound. Nikolai Baranov's radio had been silent since morning on November 15, 2016. The last check-in was brief, routine. No hint that his route would end in silence and blood. Nikolai was 52. He'd spent most of his life in those remote forests of Primorsky Krai in eastern Russia. Snow fell, muting the usual sounds. As a forestry worker, he managed patrols in the buffer zones near the Cody Allen Mountains, monitoring traps, logging boundaries, and poaching activity. He lived alone near Dalner, his routine built around the forest's rhythms. That week, he'd been assigned to survey a hunting reserve after reports of wolves pushing closer to villages. He rode out before dawn on his snowmobile, a canvas bag packed with bread, tea, a hand axe, and flares. His colleagues said he preferred working solo. A second engine, he claimed, scared off wildlife. The assignment was simple. Document animal tracks after the first full snow. Wolves had been increasingly active, driven from higher ground after a collapse in wild boar numbers. Wolves here could travel up to 20 meters in a single night. Driven by hunger across frozen ground and sparse woodland, their diets shifted with the season. Deer in autumn, carrion, smaller mammals. In the hard months of winter, when deep cold set in and prey vanished beneath ice or snow, instinct sometimes blurred into desperation. A human scent, faint and unfamiliar, might still trigger the same ancient reflex to follow, test, and close the distance. Locals warned of animals following sled trails at dusk. Nikolai heard the same warnings that morning, but didn't take them seriously. He had checked his flare gun, but left his rifle behind, citing its weight. By noon, the weather shifted fast, gusting snow and dropping visibility. His supervisor made several radio attempts that went unanswered, assuming battery failure from the cold. When evening came and Nikolai still hadn't returned, Yevgen, a neighboring ranger and longtime friend, prepared to follow his route before dark. Evgeny rode out around 5 p.m. with a flashlight mounted on his snowmobile and a sidearm holstered under his coat. The tracks were faint but visible. A single snowmobile line winding north, then stopping abruptly about 800 meters from the ridge. The engine was half buried in snow, its headlight still faintly glowing. Prints showed that Nikolai had dismounted, perhaps to clear ice from the track. Around the site, another pattern emerged. Paw marks, deep and overlapping, circling. The snow bore drag lines, evidence of pacing. Then the circle tightened. From that point, the scene unfolded through what Yevgeny later described as a sequence of struggle. Human footprints turned erratic, moving backward. Closer inspection revealed a snapped branch at chest height and a torn glove 10 feet away. A smear of blood marked the snowmobile's side panel. 30 feet beyond the snow showed clear impressions of multiple bodies pressing down. Wolves and man. The wolves had likely approached silently, using the cover of snowfall and wind. Initial bites were to the legs, pulling him down. Blood spray against nearby birch bark indicated arterial injury within seconds. As the attack progressed, the evidence suggested coordinated movement. Bite patterns indicated coordinated restraint from multiple angles. His jacket was shredded along the spine, showing where one animal had clamped onto his back, while another tore at the neck. Boot prints ended mid-stride, replaced by drag marks. Ivani followed them cautiously, revolver drawn, the forest unnervingly still. He found the body 30 meters downhill near a frozen stream. The snow around it was flattened and red. The wolves had likely fed briefly before retreating. Later investigation showed that the surrounding prints showed at least 4 individuals. Two larger adults, 2 smaller juveniles. Ivani radioed the base immediately. It took nearly an hour for a snow vehicle to arrive, by which time darkness had swallowed the clearing. The men lifted the body onto a tarp, careful not to disturb the bite patterns for analysis. The stench of blood lingered even in the cold. The pack didn't return, but distant howls echoed as the rescuers secured the area. Nikolai's remains were taken to Dahlner for examination. Autopsy confirmed catastrophic blood loss with multiple punctures to major vessels and crushing trauma to the neck vertebrae consistent with a fatal bite. Time of death was estimated shortly after the onset of the attack. The official report listed predatory behavior exacerbated by winter scarcity. Specialists noted that 2016 saw an unusual decline in prey density across the region. The incident received a single mention on regional news framed as a tragic encounter during severe weather. There was no footage, only photographs from the recovery team that were never released publicly. Now, let's move to June 14th, 2015. The Sunset Lake subdivision in suburban Tampa, Florida, was settling into another warm summer evening. The gated community, built around a series of interconnected retention ponds and decorative canals, had been marketed as a tropical paradise for retirees seeking the Florida lifestyle. Walter Walt Kowalski, a 67-year-old retired plumber from Ohio, was enjoying his 5th year in the Sunshine State from the comfort of his backyard patio, which overlooked one of the community's scenic waterways. Walt had moved. There are creatures in this world that have remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years. Apex predators, perfectly adapted to their role as ambush hunters. I've always found that span of time difficult to grasp, the sheer resilience of a species honed by millennia of survival. That evening, in Florida, a man named Walt was relaxing on his patio. He'd moved there after selling his plumbing business, drawn by the promise of year-round golf and outdoor living. He bought a modest ranch home with water access and a private dock where he could fish and feed the ducks. His routine was simple: sit on the patio with a cold beer, watch the sunset, and toss breadcrumbs to the waterfowl. The Sunset Lakes community had been built on reclaimed wetlands with retention ponds and canals to manage stormwater. These waterways connected to natural creek systems that flowed into Tampa Bay, allowing wildlife to move freely. Recent heavy rains had raised water levels, bringing more wildlife activity to residential areas. Walt had noticed more alligators, but, like most Florida residents, he had learned to coexist with them. Walt's regular duck feeding had created a reliable food source, attracting waterfowl from all over. What he didn't realize was that he was also attracting something else. American alligators are apex predators, and adult males can reach lengths of 14 feet and weights exceeding 1,000 lbs, with jaw muscles capable of exerting over 3,000 lbs of pres per square inch. They are opportunistic feeders that will consume any animal they can overpower, including birds, fish, mammals, and occasionally humans. That evening, Walt noticed that his favorite fishing lure had become tangled in the vegetation near his dock. He waded into the knee-deep water, using a long-handled net to free the snagged lure. He'd done this many times over the past 5 years without incident, confident that the shallow water was safe. The attack came from directly beneath him. A 12-foot male alligator, submerged motionless near the dock for over an hour, waiting for ducks, exploded upward with devastating force. The massive reptile's jaws clamped down on Walt's right leg with bone-crushing power. The 3,000 lbs of bite pres instantly fractured his femur and severed major arteries. The alligator immediately initiated its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining his grip on Walt's leg. The violent rotation dislocated Walt's hip and pulled him fully into the canal, where the gator's natural advantages became overwhelming. The alligator dragged Walt toward the deeper center of the canal, where its superior swimming ability and underwater endurance made escape impossible. Within minutes, Walt's movements ceased as drowning and massive blood loss overwhelmed his system. Emergency responders arrived within 10 minutes of the call, but the alligator had already retreated to the deeper water with Walt's body. Police and wildlife officers worked through the night to locate and capture the reptile, using specialized equipment to safely extract both the alligator and Walt's remains. The investigation revealed that Walt's regular duck feeding had inadvertently attracted the large alligator to his property, creating a dangerous situation that culminated in the fatal attack. Walt's death prompted immediate changes to the Sunset Lakes community's water safety protocols, including the installation of warning signs around all retention ponds and canals. On September 8, 2014, the vast wetlands of the Florida Everglades stretched endlessly under the blazing afternoon sun. Sawgrass prairies and cypress swamps teeming with some of America's most dangerous wildlife. The remote waterways near Tamiami Trail buzzed with the activity of airboat tours, carrying tourists deep into alligator territory where massive reptiles basked on mud banks and hunted in the dark water channels. Michael Chen, a 35-year-old software engineer from Seattle, was experiencing his first visit to Florida as part of a cross-country road trip to celebrate his recent promotion. Michael had always been fascinated by technology and outdoor adventure, spending his weekends hiking in the Pacific Northwest Mountains. His engineering background had given him confidence in analyzing risks and solving problems, but his experience with dangerous wildlife was limited to black bears and mountain lions that could be avoided through proper precautions. Michael had grown up in urban Seattle, developing his love of nature through weekend camping trips with his father and uncle. His methodical approach to problem-solving had made him successful in his career, but it had also given him perhaps too much confidence in his ability to assess and manage dangerous situations. Michael enjoyed taking photos of his travels to share with his family and friends back home. That afternoon, Michael had joined a small group airboat tour that promised close encounters with alligators and other Everglades wildlife. The tour guide, a weathered Floridian with decades of swamp experience, had repeatedly warned passengers to remain seated and keep hands inside the boat at all times. "I've read that an alligator's jaw muscles can exert over 3,000 pounds of pres per square inch. It's a force almost beyond comprehension. They can launch themselves partially out of the water with explosive force, and they view any movement near their territory as either prey to be consumed or threats to be eliminated. It's a chilling calculus of survival." An airboat tour was progressing smoothly when the guide spotted a massive alligator sunning itself on a mud bank about 20 feet away. The reptile was easily 12 feet long and weighed over 800 pounds, its prehistoric form perfectly motionless in the afternoon heat. One of the tourists, Michael, began photographing the magnificent predator, excited to capture images of such an impressive wild animal. His enthusiasm, however, quickly overcame his caution. He leaned farther over the boat's edge to get closer shots of the massive alligator. The fatal moment came when Michael's phone slipped from his grip and began falling toward the dark water. Without thinking, Michael lunged forward, extending his body over the side of the airboat, desperately trying to catch his device before it disappeared into the swamp. The massive alligator had been monitoring the boat's presence with predatory patience, and Michael's sudden movement triggered its attack response immediately. The 800-pound reptile exploded from the mudbank with terrifying speed. Its powerful tail propelled it through the water like a missile, aimed directly at Michael's exposed position. The alligator's massive jaws clamped down on Michael's outstretched arm with bone-crushing force. Its 3,000 pounds of bite press instantly shattered bones and severed major arteries. Michael's scream of shock and pain echoed across the swamp as the reptile's momentum pulled him completely over the side of the airboat and into the murky water. The tour guide and other passengers grabbed desperately at Michael's legs, trying to pull him back into the boat, while the massive alligator maintained its crushing grip on his arm. The alligator immediately began its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining its devastating grip on Michael's arm. Michael's struggles grew weaker as the combination of massive blood loss, crushing injuries, and drowning overwhelmed his body. The alligator's grip never loosened as it continued the death roll with mechanical precision, each rotation causing additional trauma while ensuring its prey could not escape. Within minutes, Michael's movement ceased as the alligator's brutal assault proved fatal. The massive reptile dragged his body into deeper water, where it disappeared beneath the surface with its kill. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but Michael's body was not recovered until the following day, when wildlife officials located the massive alligator and retrieved the remains. The tour company immediately implemented physical barriers around all passenger seating areas and enhanced safety briefings for future tours. Michael's death prompted his family to advocate for stricter safety regulations in the wildlife tourism industry. The incident highlighted the deadly consequences of ignoring safety warnings around apex predators, and became a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing photography over personal safety. It was July 8, 2017, and the Detroit summer heat shimmered off abandoned lots as Maria Santos loaded her car with dog food and water. At 28, she'd spent 5 years walking dogs by day and feeding Detroit's feral population by night. Recently laid off, she'd been spending more time in dangerous neighborhoods, trying to help animals most people considered beyond saving. The economic collapse had hit Detroit hard, leaving entire neighborhoods abandoned and creating perfect breeding grounds for packs of wild dogs. These weren't lost pets. They were second and third generation feral animals that had never known human kindness, surviving by scavenging and defending territory with savage efficiency. Maria's regular route took her through 6 abandoned lots, each home to a different pack. She knew their hierarchies, feeding schedules, and individual personalities. But the newest group concerned her the most. 6 dogs led by a large German Shepherd mix she'd nicknamed Alpha, including several animals she didn't recognize. This pack was hungrier, more aggressive, and less predictable than the others. But Maria's compassion overruled her caution. These animals needed help, and she was the only one willing to provide it. As twilight settled over the abandoned neighborhood, Maria parked near the lot where Alpha's pack had made their home. The area was a wasteland of broken concrete and waist-high weeds, perfect cover for animals that had learned to hunt and hide. Maria had been feeding this pack for 3 weeks, always maintaining a safe distance, but tonight felt different. The dogs seemed more agitated, their movements more coordinated, their attention more focused on her than the food. What she didn't realize was that pack dynamics had shifted with the addition of 3 new dogs, animals that saw humans not as providers but as competitors. Alpha emerged from the shadows first, his 80-pound frame moving with predatory grace. Behind him came the others, a scarred pit bull mix, 2 smaller dogs, and 3 newcomers whose breeds were impossible to determine. Their eyes reflected the dim streetlight like mirrors. Maria began distributing food as always, tossing handfuls of kibble in different directions to prevent fighting. But tonight, the strategy backfired. Instead of dispersing to eat, the dogs began to close in. I've seen what happens when a pack animal reverts. It's a primal switch. One moment, there's a semblance of domestication, and the next, pure instinct takes over. I remember reading about Maria, a woman who fed a pack of stray dogs in an abandoned neighborhood. It was a kindness that turned tragically wrong. The dogs had begun to circle her, their movements coordinated. When 2 smaller ones fought over food, Maria stepped in to break it up. A fatal mistake. That's when Alpha's pack instincts took over. She wasn't the woman who fed them anymore. She was competition. His lips peeled back in a silent snarl, and he launched himself at her. 80 pounds of muscle slammed into her chest, driving her backward onto broken concrete. His jaws clamped down on her left arm, teeth tearing through her jacket and the flesh beneath. The other dogs joined in within seconds, their pack mentality overriding any memory of Maria's kindness. The scarred pit bull grabbed her right leg, his powerful jaws crushing bone as he shook violently. The 2 smaller dogs went for her torso, tearing through clothing and skin. Her screams echoed through the empty neighborhood, but no one was left to hear. She fought desperately, but 6 dogs working together were too much for any human. The pack dragged her deeper into the lot, away from any chance of rescue. It was a coordinated attack, generations of predatory instincts refined by years of urban survival. These weren't pets gone bad. They were wild animals that had learned to see humans as threats or prey. Her movements grew weaker as blood loss and shock took their toll. The dogs showed no signs of stopping, their feeding frenzy triggered by blood and the thrill of a successful hunt. By the time they finally backed away, Maria lay motionless among the weeds and debris. Urban explorers found her body the next morning. It took 3 days to capture all 6 dogs using tranquilizer guns and cage traps. They were euthanized within hours, their wild nature making rehabilitation impossible. I recall another story from September 8, 2015. Kendra Sullivan, a wildlife photographer, arrived at the Ngamba Island Chimpanzee Sanctuary in Uganda. It's a 100-acre forested island on Lake Victoria, a refuge for orphaned and rescued chimpanzees, providing a semi-natural environment where these intelligent primates could live in social groups. Kendra, known for her fearless approach, had been commissioned to document the rehabilitation work. She believed her experience with domestic animals gave her an understanding of animal behavior that transcended species. Her best friend, Amy Chen, a documentary filmmaker, accompanied her. But Dr. James Mukasa, the sanctuary's director, grew increasingly concerned as Kendra dismissed his safety briefings, demanding access to restricted areas for better photographs. Peter Sally, a caretaker, repeatedly warned her about the unpredictable nature of these powerful animals, but she brushed off his concerns as superstition. The sanctuary housed 49 rescued chimpanzees, many traumatized by poaching or the illegal pet trade. Despite rehabilitation, these animals retained all the instincts and physical capabilities of their wild counterparts, making them extremely dangerous without proper barriers. Chimpanzees are among the most powerful primates on Earth, their strength 5 times greater than an adult human. Adult males can weigh up to 150 pounds and stand over 4 feet tall, with massive chest muscles and arms capable of exerting tremendous force. Their hands possess grip strength exceeding 1,300 pounds per square inch, enough to crush bones, and, notably, they have large canine teeth over 2 inches long, designed for both defense and establishing dominance. During the afternoon tour, Kendra grew frustrated with the viewing restrictions. She had specifically requested access to maintenance areas where staff entered the enclose. Dr. Mukasa repeatedly explained that these areas were off-limits due to the extreme danger of direct contact with the chimpanzees. But while the group was observing chimpanzees in a distant enclave, Kendra noticed an unlocked gate leading to a maintenance corridor. Despite explicit warnings, she slipped away and entered the restricted zone, believing her experience with domestic animals had prepared her for any situation. The maintenance area brought Kendra within direct reach of Boso, the sanctuary's dominant male, a 150-pound adult rescued as an infant 15 years earlier. Boso had shown aggressive tendencies toward unfamiliar humans and was considered one of the most dangerous animals in the facility. The powerful chimpanzee was resting near the barrier when he detected Kendra's presence. Chimpanzees are highly territorial and view unfamiliar humans as potential threats. Bozo immediately became agitated by Kendra's intrusion. When she approached the barrier and raised her camera to photograph him, Boso interpreted this action as a direct challenge to his dominance. The primate's response was immediate and devastating. Boso lunged forward and grabbed Kendra's extended arm with crushing force. His grip strength was beyond comprehension. I've spent years tracking animal behavior, learning to read patterns in the snow. I've always believed that wolves avoid humans by instinct. But on February 9, 2014, near Lang, Saskatchewan, two men found out that instinct can be overridden by hunger and desperation. What started as a routine trip into familiar woods became something neither man could have imagined. My name is David Lasky. I was 45 then, a part-time wildlife photographer. I lived just outside Prince Albert with my wife and teenage son. Photography was my passion, and it brought in a little extra income. My real job was at a lumber supply store, but weekends were for the woods. My cousin Jeff, who was 42, often joined me on winter runs to retrieve SD cards from trail cams. We'd grown up hunting and fishing together, though neither of us carried a firearm anymore. That weekend, after a light snowfall, late-season hunger had made local deer scarce, and I wanted to check a set of cameras I'd left by a frozen creek north of Wasco Lake. We'd heard distant howls before, but never close. The plan was simple. A 2-hour ride by snowmobile, a short hike to the cameras, and back before dusk. Wolves in that region are typically gray, thick-coated animals, averaging about 90 pounds. They move in tight family groups of 4 to 8. Their strength lies in coordination, silent pursuit, strategic circling, and patience rather than outright speed. Under normal conditions, they avoid people entirely, focusing on deer and moose along the forest edges. We dressed in insulated gear and carried only a single red flare for safety. By 9:30 a.m., we parked our snowmobile near the creek and began walking the last half-mile through packed snow, our breath hanging in the still air. At first, everything seemed normal. We reached the first camera, brushed off the lens, and swapped the SD card. Around 10:15, as we crossed the creek, Jeff's boot slipped on a patch of crusted ice. I crouched to help him up, steadying my cousin by the arm. That was when we both noticed faint movement among the tree line across the creek. The animals stood still at first, only their eyes catching the light. Jeff straightened and waved his arms, shouting to scare them off. But the wolves didn't run. We didn't know it then, but a freshly killed deer lay half buried in snow about 20 yards behind the tree line, a cached carcass the wolves had dragged there the night before. The pack was food-stressed, defending their kill rather than hunting. They began to fan out slowly, forming a loose semicircle. I muttered that they were just curious, that noise would drive them away. But even as I spoke, one of the wolves lowered its head and started advancing. We began backing up the slope toward our snowmobile, moving quickly but without turning. The wolves followed, quiet and steady. Then the first lunge came. A gray blur across the ice, jaws clamping onto the back of my leg. The impact drove me face first into the snow. Jeff spun and reached for the flare, but his gloves fumbled with the cap. 2 more wolves broke from the trees, bounding fast, their paws sending up bursts of white powder. I tried to kick free, leaving streaks of blood against the snow. I managed to roll onto my back and swing an arm, hitting one wolf across the muzzle with my camera bag, but another struck from the side, teeth finding my shoulder. Jeff finally snapped the flare to life, the red flame hissing. He swung it toward the animals. One wolf snarled and darted back, fur singed along its flank, but the others held ground. I was on my knees now, one hand pressed to my thigh, blood pumping dark and fast through my fingers. I tried to rise, but my leg gave out beneath me. Jeff charged forward with the flare, yelling, waving it more aggressively. The heat drove them back momentarily, circling just out of reach. I slumped sideways. I've spent years studying the intersection of wilderness and tragedy, and some stories haunt me more than others. Consider this: a flare burning steadily in the darkness. A young man, Jeff, swinging it in wide arcs, desperate to keep a pack of wolves at bay. He was panting, his breath coming in shallow bursts. The wolves retreated into the trees, growling low as they vanished. Jeff pressed on his cousin's wound, but it was too deep. Within a minute, the movement stopped. He pulled David's camera bag close and used his phone to call for help. Reception cut in and out, but a faint intermittent signal reached a nearby ranger station. Authorities arrived about 40 minutes later by snowmobile. They found Jeff sitting beside the body, shaking uncontrollably. Wolf tracks surrounded the site in a broad ring, with drag marks leading back toward the tree line and the cached deer carcass. The official report listed the cause of death as exsanguination from femoral artery trauma, consistent with large animal bites. Provincial conservation officers, assisted by federal wildlife agents, closed the area within the hour. Samples were taken from the bite margins for DNA analysis, and the implicated pack was later trapped and relocated to a remote management zone north of Reindeer Lake. Wildlife biologists suggested the wolves had been defending a food cache, not actively hunting, but the distinction mattered little to those who saw the aftermath. Then there's the story of December 9th, 2018. The hillside community of Canyon Vista in suburban Los Angeles was experiencing an unusually warm winter evening. The residential development built where urban sprawl met the wild chaparral of the Santa Monica Mountains featured homes perched on steep slopes with spectacular views of the city below. Kevin Chen, a 16-year-old high school junior and varsity basketball player, was running late after practice and decided to take his usual shortcut through an undeveloped lot rather than follow the longer route along the main road. Kevin was an honor student and star athlete who balanced academic excellence with athletic achievement, earning recognition as one of his school's most promising college prospects. He lived with his parents and younger sister in a modern home that backed up against the natural open space that made Canyon Vista such a desirable address. Kevin often used the informal trails and vacant lots to move quickly between his home and school, a practice that had never caused any problems during his 4 years in the neighborhood. The Canyon Vista area had been experiencing increased wildlife activity following a series of devastating wildfires that had burned thousands of acres in the surrounding mountains. The fires had displaced numerous predators, forcing them to seek new territory and food sources in areas they had previously avoided. Local authorities had issued warnings about mountain lion sightings in residential areas, but most residents viewed these as routine precautions rather than serious threats. Kevin was aware of the wildlife warnings but had never encountered any dangerous animals during his frequent use of the neighborhood's informal trail system. He carried his basketball gear in a backpack and typically moved quickly through the undeveloped areas, confident that his familiarity with the terrain and his athletic ability would keep him safe from any potential threats. Mountain lions are solitary predators that require large territories to support their hunting needs, with adult males controlling ranges of up to 100 square miles. Juvenile males are particularly dangerous as they establish new territories, often displaying more aggressive behavior than experienced adults. These young cats are less skilled at hunting natural prey and may target easier victims, including domestic animals and, occasionally, humans. Mountain lions are capable of incredible stealth and can stalk prey for extended periods before launching surprise attacks from close range. As Kevin jogged through the overgrown vacant lot, he was unaware that an 80 lb juvenile male mountain lion had been using the area as a hunting ground for domestic cats and small dogs that wandered from nearby homes. The young cat had been displaced from his natal territory by an older, more dominant male, and was desperately seeking to establish new hunting grounds that could support his survival. The mountain lion had been stalking Kevin for several hundred yards, moving silently through the dense brush while staying downwind to avoid detection. The cat's hunting instincts were triggered by Kevin's size, movement pattern, and the fact that he was alone and vulnerable in the predator's newly claimed territory. The attack came from behind as Kevin navigated through a particularly dense section of chaparral. The 80 lb mountain lion launched himself from the brush with explosive force, his powerful hind legs propelling him through the air to land squarely on Kevin's back. The impact drove Kevin face first into the rocky ground, while the cat's claws found purchase in his shoulders and back. The mountain lion's jaws clamped down on the back of Kevin's neck, his 4 canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae, while his bite force targeted the spinal cord. Kevin's attempts to fight back with his backpack proved futile against the cat's superior strength and positioning. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Kevin's shoulders and torso, each swipe opening deep gashes that caused massive blood loss. Kevin's screams for help echoed through the hillside community, alerting residents in nearby homes to the emergency unfolding in the vacant lot. Several homeowners called 911 while attempting to locate the source of the disturbance, but the dense vegetation made it difficult to pinpoint Kevin's exact location. The mountain lion continued his attack for several minutes, driven by predatory instincts and the stress of establishing new territory. Police and paramedics arrived within 10 minutes of the first 911 call, using Kevin's continued cries for help to locate him in the brush. Sometimes, the line between the wild and the tame blurs with tragic consequences. I remember reading about a mountain lion displaced by wildfires that wandered into a residential area. A man named Kevin lost his life in that encounter. It prompted the city to erect fences and develop new wildlife management protocols, a stark reminder of the boundaries we must respect. But the wildness in animals isn't always a matter of habitat. It was November 3, 2015, and I recall the story of Loner Exotic Ranch, sprawled across 300 acres of East Texas. It was a place where wealthy clients paid handsomely for photo sessions with dangerous predators, a business operating in the shadows of legitimate wildlife conservation, offering interactions that no accredited zoo would ever permit. On that particular afternoon, the sun cast long shadows across custom-built encloses housing tigers, lions, and other big cats acquired through questionable means. A 27-year-old personal trainer from Houston named Brandon Walsh had discovered the ranch through word of mouth. He was passionate about fitness and adventure, always seeking new challenges. He'd saved for months to afford this unique experience, viewing it as the ultimate test of his courage and confidence around dangerous animals. Brandon had built his personal training business through dedication, developing a reputation for helping clients overcome their fears. His confident personality had perhaps made him overconfident about his ability to handle any dangerous situation. That afternoon, Brandon paid the ranch's exorbitant fee for a private photo session with Sasha, a 300-pound female Bengal tiger who had been hand-raised from a cub. The ranch owner, a former circus trainer with decades of experience handling big cats, agreed to supervise the session while repeatedly emphasizing the extreme dangers involved. Bengal tigers are among the world's most powerful predators, with adult females weighing up to 350 pounds, possessing incredible strength, speed, and hunting instincts that remain sharp regardless of human contact. These magnificent cats are solitary, territorial animals that can become extremely aggressive when their personal space is violated. Their powerful jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 1,000 pounds per square inch, while their razor-sharp claws can grow up to 4 inches long. The photo session began with Brandon positioned outside Sasha's enclosure, capturing dramatic shots of himself posed near the massive predator while maintaining the safety barrier between them. However, Brandon quickly became frustrated with the distance, believing he needed closer contact to create the dramatic photos he had envisioned. He convinced the ranch owner to allow him closer access to Sasha, arguing that his physical conditioning and confident energy would keep the tiger calm during the shoot. Against his better judgment and all established safety protocols, the owner agreed to let Brandon enter a smaller holding area adjacent to Sasha's main enclosure. The holding area was separated from Sasha's territory by only a chain-link barrier, bringing Brandon within arm's reach of the massive predator. Brandon began posing for his camera, which was mounted on a tripod and set to take photos automatically. Brandon's fatal mistake was crouching down next to the barrier and extending his hand toward Sasha, believing that his confident demeanor would demonstrate his dominance over the apex predator. The tiger's ears flattened slightly against her massive head, and her tail began twitching with increasing frequency. Sasha's attack was swift and devastating. The moment Brandon moved suddenly to adjust his pose for another photo, the tiger's hunting instincts activated with explosive force. Sasha launched herself at the barrier with tremendous power. Her massive paws struck the chain-link fencing, while her razor-sharp claws found purchase on Brandon's extended arm. The tiger's incredible strength pulled Brandon against the barrier, while her powerful jaws snapped at his position through the fencing. The tiger's claws raked across Brandon's arm and shoulder, opening deep gashes that immediately began bleeding profusely, while her crushing grip prevented any possibility of retreat. The ranch owner rushed to intervene, using emergency protocols to distract Sasha and force her to release her grip on Brandon. However, The tiger's claws had already caused catastrophic damage to Brandon's arm and shoulder, severing major arteries and causing massive blood loss that quickly overwhelmed his system. Brandon collapsed from shock and blood loss within minutes of the attack, his physical conditioning proving useless against injuries that no human could. I keep thinking about Sasha, the tiger. She was moved to a sanctuary after her owner died. It's strange to imagine a creature like that, so powerful, reduced to a prop. A reminder of how easily things can go wrong when we forget the wildness in things. Brandon, Sasha's owner, died from massive trauma and blood loss. Emergency responders arrived within 20 minutes, but it was too late. The ranch was operating without proper permits or insurance, violating state regulations. The facility was permanently closed. It sent shockwaves through the fitness community and prompted enhanced safety education about using wild animals as photography props. His family filed lawsuits arguing that inadequate safety measures had contributed to the tragedy. Then there's Tommy Rodriguez. August 19, 2013. The Missouri heat was thick over his remote property. The stench of neglect permeated every corner of his illegal breeding operation. He'd been running puppy mills for over a decade, but financial press forced him to cut corners, ultimately costing him his life. His 20-acre property was a maze of makeshift kennels in converted sheds, housing nearly 80 dogs. Tommy specialized in popular breeds, selling them to unsuspecting buyers. But the real money came from the security side of his operation. 4 massive dogs patrolling the perimeter. 2 cane corsos weighing over 120 pounds each, and 2 mastiff mixes tipping the scales at nearly 140. They weren't pets, they were weapons, trained to be aggressive. The financial press had been building for months. Veterinary bills, feed costs, and facility maintenance ate into profits. Increased scrutiny from animal welfare organizations forced him to operate more carefully, but he cut back on everything: food, medical care, even basic maintenance. The guard dogs, once fed premium meat, had been reduced to scraps and cheap kibble. What Tommy didn't understand was that hungry guard dogs were exponentially more dangerous than well-fed ones. Hunger sharpened their predatory instincts, made them more territorial, and reduced their tolerance for human presence. The 4 animals now viewed everything, including Tommy, as potential competition for scarce resources. They'd been showing signs of increased aggression for weeks, fighting among themselves over food and showing less deference to Tommy's commands. A smart operator would have recognized the warning signs, but Tommy was desperate, distracted, and overconfident. On that sweltering August night, he made his final rounds of the property. It was past midnight, and the Missouri countryside was silent except for distant barking and the hum of inadequate ventilation fans. He carried a flashlight and a metal rod, but his attention was focused on financial calculations. The guard dogs had been without food for 3 days. Not by design, but because Tommy had been too busy dealing with a sick litter to maintain their feeding schedule. Their hunger had reached a critical point. They were no longer guard dogs protecting property. They were predators looking for their next meal. Tommy's mistake was approaching the area where he kept the guard dogs without proper precautions. Normally, he would have fed them first, but financial stress and exhaustion had made him careless, and he walked directly into their domain, carrying nothing but a flashlight and false confidence. The attack began when Brutus, the larger cane corso, emerged from the shadows near the feeding area. His 125-pound frame moved with surprising silence, his massive head lowered in a hunting posture. Behind him came the others: Titan, the second cane corso; Rex, a 140-pound mastiff mix; and Scar, whose scarred muzzle told the story of his fighting background. Tommy realized the danger too late. As he turned to retreat, Brutus launched himself forward, his powerful jaws clamping down on Tommy's left eye with crushing force. The impact drove Tommy to the ground, his flashlight spinning away into darkness as he screamed for help that would never come. The other 3 dogs joined the attack within seconds, their pack instincts fully engaged. Rex grabbed Tommy's right arm, his massive jaws crushing bone as he shook violently. Titan went for the torso, his teeth tearing through clothing and flesh. Scar circled the attack, darting in to bite and retreat, his fighting experience evident. Tommy's screams echoed across the empty countryside, but his nearest neighbor was over 2 miles away. The dogs worked with the coordination of experienced predators, focusing on disabling their prey rather than killing quickly. They had learned patience, and hunger had made them methodical in their violence. The assault continued for nearly 20 minutes, the dogs taking turns feeding on Tommy while he was still alive. His struggles grew weaker as blood loss and shock took their toll, but the animals showed no mercy. They had been conditioned to view violence as normal, hunger as constant, and humans as either threats or food sources. I've seen what desperation can do. I've read accounts of animals turning on their masters, hunger overriding any sense of loyalty. But the case of Tommy, that one always stuck with me. His body, broken and partially consumed, found near the very animals he used to guard his illegal operation. Tommy's guard dogs, temporarily sated, retreated, their aggression undiminished. His remains went undiscovered for 3 weeks, a horrifying feast for the creatures he exploited. The rest of his breeding operation crumbled. Dogs trapped in kennels starved. The stench eventually drew authorities investigating animal cruelty reports. The scene they found was beyond words. Tommy's remains scattered. Dozens of dead and dying dogs filled makeshift kennels. The 4 guard dogs deemed aggressive were shot. The investigation revealed the scale of Tommy's cruelty. Breeding females in deplorable conditions, puppies dying from disease, and financial records showing sales of sick animals across state lines. The surviving dogs, too far gone, were euthanized. Tommy's death ended one of Missouri's largest puppy mills, but at a terrible cost. He became a victim of the very system he created, his animals turning into the monsters he tried to forge. Then there was August 22, 2014. The Cypress Point community, a luxury development on the edge of the Florida Everglades, shimmered in the summer heat. Roberto Mendez, a 35-year-old landscaper, maintained those pristine grounds. He had built his business from nothing, supporting his wife and 2 young children through long hours in the Florida sun. Cypress Point was built on reclaimed wetlands, an elaborate system of ponds and waterways connected to the Everglades. Roberto knew Florida's wildlife. He respected it, always careful around water features. But one afternoon, trimming bushes around an ornamental pond, his hedge trimmer slipped into the water. American alligators are masters of ambush, lying motionless for hours. Adult females can reach 10 feet and weigh 200 pounds, striking with incredible speed. They're most dangerous when protecting nests or surprised by humans. Their bite force exceeds 2,000 pounds per square inch, and their death roll is designed to drown prey. Roberto waded into the pond to retrieve his trimmer, assuming it was safe. He'd done this 100 times before, but the moment his feet touched the muddy bottom, a 10-foot female exploded from the vegetation. Her jaws clamped onto his right leg with devastating force. His tibia and fibula fractured, arteries and muscle tissue punctured. The alligator initiated her signature death roll, spinning in the water, crushing his leg. He was pulled into the deeper center of the pond. I've read about apex predators ruling the seas for 400 million years. I've seen the photos, the diagrams of teeth, but nothing prepared me for the sheer violence of what happened that day at Neptune Islands. It was March 22, 2017, when Tara Whitfield arrived there, off the coast of South Australia. Neptune Islands, one of the world's premier great white shark diving destinations. The remote rocky outcrops jutted from the Southern Ocean, surrounded by crystal-clear waters that plunged to depths of over 200 feet. These nutrient-rich waters served as a natural highway for migrating great whites, drawing the massive predators to hunt the abundant seal colonies. Tara Whitfield, a 38-year-old marine biology graduate student from Los Angeles, had booked the most expensive shark cage diving package available and immediately began making unreasonable demands. She was known for her entitled attitude and belief that money could buy her anything. She had already berated Captain Steve Morrison and marine biologist Dr. Lisa Chen multiple times during the morning briefing. Her boyfriend, Brad Mitchell, watched uncomfortably as Tara screamed at the crew for what she called their pathetic safety restrictions. Captain Morrison, with 18 years of experience operating in these dangerous waters, had dealt with difficult clients before. But Tara's aggressive behavior and complete lack of empathy alarmed him. She repeatedly demanded that the protective cage be removed entirely, claiming she had paid premium prices and deserved unrestricted access to the sharks. When Dr. Lisa Chen attempted to explain the life-threatening dangers, Tara dismissed her as an incompetent employee who was clearly jealous of successful people. Tara had convinced herself that her graduate student status and expensive booking fee entitled her to special treatment. She threatened to destroy the company's reputation online and file lawsuits if the crew didn't provide her with the extreme experience she demanded. Her complete disregard for safety became evident when she suggested that crew members should enter the water first to test whether the sharks were dangerous. The waters around Neptune Islands hosted some of the largest great white sharks on Earth. These magnificent hunters can reach lengths of over 20 feet and weights exceeding 4,000 pounds, with massive triangular heads housing rows of razor-sharp serrated teeth. Each tooth measures up to 3 inches in length and is designed to slice through flesh and bone with devastating efficiency. Great whites possess the most powerful bite force of any living creature, capable of exerting over 4,000 pounds per square inch of crushing press. The crew had successfully attracted multiple great white sharks using a carefully prepared chum mixture. Among the responding predators was a massive 18-foot female estimated to weigh over 4,000 pounds that had been feeding aggressively on the bait. The enormous shark displayed classic hunting behaviors, circling the boat with calculated precision while investigating the steel diving cage. Before entering the water, Tara secretly loosened the connections on her diving regulator, planning to create a fake equipment malfunction that would justify exiting the protective cage. She believed she was clever enough to manipulate the situation to get the unrestricted shark access she felt entitled to. Once submerged in the protective cage, Tara immediately began signaling fake distress to the surface crew, pointing frantically at her sabotaged regulator. Captain Morrison initiated emergency procedures to bring her to the surface, but instead of ascending, Tara swam away from the cage toward the feeding sharks, believing her superior intelligence made her invulnerable. Her erratic swimming movements created the exact type of distressed prey behavior that triggers great white hunting instincts. The massive female great white detected Tara's panicked swimming immediately and abandoned the chum bait to investigate this new potential prey. The enormous predator approached from below at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour. The shark's assault was swift and devastating. Rising from the depths like a living torpedo, the great white struck Tara from below with tremendous force, its massive jaws opening to reveal rows of gleaming serrated teeth. The impact drove Tara upward as the shark's jaws clamped down around her torso with bone-crushing press. The razor-sharp teeth sliced through her wetsuit and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force of 4,000 pounds per square inch shattered Tara's ribcage instantly, puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels throughout her torso. The shark's powerful jaw muscles continued applying press, while its head thrashed violently from side to side, the signature feeding behavior that allows great whites to tear away large chunks of flesh. The violent shaking motion severed Tara's body at the waist, separating her upper and lower torso. There are moments when our actions seem to defy all logic, when we believe we can bend the rules of nature itself. I recall reading about Tara, who believed that money and demands could override the instincts of a shark. She deliberately sabotaged equipment and violated safety protocols during a shark cage diving operation. The end was swift and brutal as a shark consumed portions of her body in a cloud of blood. Her death, caused by massive blood loss and the destruction of vital organs, led to stricter regulations for shark cage diving. Even in the aftermath, her family continued to display the same sense of entitlement that had tragically led to her demise, filing lawsuits against the tour company. Then there's the story of Harold Thompson. It was March 22, 2015, and the Alabama sun beat down on his property, where the barking of dogs echoed from kennels scattered across 5 acres. At 71, Hank, as he was known, moved slowly between the enclos, carrying water with the confidence that came from 20 years of dog breeding. He and his wife, Martha, had built their Rottweiler and German Shepherd operation from the ground up, turning a hobby into a modest business. But age had made Hank careless. In his younger days, he would never have entered a kennel alone, especially with breeding males during territorial phases. He'd seen what these dogs were capable of. Their prize was a Brutus, a 130-pound Rottweiler, their most sought-after stud. At 4 years old, he was in his prime, his bloodline traced back to German working dogs. But recently, Brutus had been showing increased aggression, a minor injury to his leg making him irritable. Martha had expressed concerns about Hank working alone with Brutus, but Hank dismissed her worries. He'd raised Brutus from a puppy and believed their bond was unbreakable. On that March afternoon, Martha had driven into town for supplies, leaving Hank alone with the dogs. The kennels needed cleaning. Water bowls required filling. Work Hank had done thousands of times before. Brutus watched from his kennel as Hank approached, his dark eyes tracking every movement. The dog was panting heavily despite the shade, his injured leg causing him to shift uncomfortably. Pain can make even docile animals unpredictable, and Brutus was far from docile. Hank unlocked the kennel gate and stepped inside, bucket in hand, focused on the dirty water bowl. He'd performed this routine hundreds of times, but today, Brutus was different. The dog's ears were pinned back, his tail held low, his massive body coiled with tension. As Hank bent down, his back turned to the dog, Brutus made his decision. There was no growling, no warning, just a 130 pounds of muscle launching through the air. The impact drove Hank face first into the concrete floor as Brutus's jaws found their target. The dog's teeth sank deep into Hank's throat, crushing his windpipe and severing major blood vessels. Hank's hands clawed desperately at the animal's head, but Brutus had locked on. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone. Hank's screams were cut short, replaced by a wet gurgling sound. Blood pooled beneath his body as Brutus continued his attack. The assault lasted less than 3 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. When Brutus finally released his grip, Hank lay motionless on the kennel floor. Martha returned home 2 hours later to find the property strangely quiet. She called out for Hank as she walked toward the kennels but received no response. When she saw Brutus standing guard over her husband's body, the horror became clear. The dog positioned himself between her and Hank's body, his lips pulled back in a snarl. Martha backed away slowly, dialing 911 from her truck. Sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes, but Brutus refused to allow anyone near Hank's body. The decision was made to shoot Brutus rather than risk additional casualties. The investigation concluded that Hank's death was a tragic accident caused by his failure to recognize the warning signs of an aggressive, injured animal. The breeding operation was shut down, the remaining dogs relocated, and Martha was left to grieve both her husband and the animal that had been part of their family. It was September 3, 2013, near the Tuklat River in Denali National Park, Alaska. By early afternoon, the wind had dropped and the landscape stood still. I've always been drawn to the stories that linger in the wild, the ones etched in tooth and claw. The account of Sarah, a seasoned hiker in Denali, is one that particularly stayed with me. She ventured into the Alaskan backcountry, a minimalist relying on her skills, aiming for a 2-day loop near the Tlat River, drawn by the caribou migration and the wolves that followed. She wasn't naive. She carried bear spray, a GPS beacon, and enough food for 2 nights. Solo travel was her norm, often chronicling her adventures for small hiking blogs. She had all the required permits for the Denali backcountry zones. Rangers remembered her asking about wolf movements, but she seemed unfazed by increased sightings near the river. Wolves, after all, were just part of the environment, something to respect, not fear. These wolves, averaging 70 to 100 pounds, were built for endurance, capable of covering vast distances. Their bite force, nearly 400 pounds per square inch, could crush bone. Normally, they kept to themselves, preying on caribou, hares, and ground squirrels. But scarcity or the scent of human food could pique their curiosity. That week, advisories had been posted, warning of wolves trailing hikers. Sarah likely saw them, but there was no record she changed her route. Her confidence was understandable. Statistically, Denali's wolves avoided confrontation. Around 4 p.m., a tourist group spotted a lone figure on a gravel bar. It was Sarah, waving before heading upstream toward her camp. She reached her final GPS coordinate before 4:45 p.m. The last photos on her camera showed the river valley and a small group of wolves following a caribou herd in the distance. Tracks later revealed she moved off the gravel bar, likely planning to cut inland. The first sign of struggle appeared about half a mile from her tent. Her GPS recorded erratic movement, rapid looping, then a sudden stop. Investigators pieced together what happened through physical evidence and predator behavior. The wolves, their original prey now out of sight, had turned toward her. Sarah likely saw them at a distance and deployed her bear spray. Residue was found on nearby vegetation, but the wind shifted, causing blowback. It worked briefly, pushing the wolves back about 20 feet, but the scent faded. They circled again, emboldened. One flank approached from behind as she retreated up a shallow embankment. Handprints pressed into the soil showed she climbed in haste. Blood marks began at the top of the slope. A wolf likely lunged, grabbing her backpack or arm. The straps were torn, consistent with a pulling force. A second wolf joined, biting her thigh. She fought back. The spray canister lay empty, but the wolves coordinated. The ground was churned with soil and hair, suggesting a struggle before she was forced down. Tissue marks revealed crushing bites to the neck and shoulder, a killing grip used to suffocate large prey. Her jacket was shredded, the torn sleeve found 20 feet away, still holding fragments of skin and fabric. Search efforts began that night. The next morning, a helicopter spotted a disturbed patch of gravel near the Tlat Channel. Sarah's body lay partially covered, her left arm missing, likely taken by scavengers. Her final photograph was taken just 6 minutes before her estimated time of death. The park temporarily closed backcountry zones along the migration corridor. Genetic sampling confirmed the wolves belonged to the Tolat pack. Investigators concluded the attack began as a predatory test that escalated fatally. With no repeated approach or food-seeking behavior observed, no removals were ordered. Rangers explained the findings to Sarah's parents, who issued a statement urging the park not to punish what it protects. Then, on April 14, 2018, Monica Barrett arrived at Everglades National Park in Florida, a vast wetland ecosystem of sawgrass marshes and shallow waterways, home to some of North America's most dangerous predators, including massive American alligators. Monica, a 44-year-old divorce attorney from Miami, booked a solo kayak tour to clear her head after a difficult custody case. Known for her aggressive courtroom tactics, she had built her career on intimidation. Her reputation for getting her way had created a dangerous sense of entitlement. Tommy Rodriguez, a 52-year-old tour guide with over 20 years of experience, immediately recognized Monica as a problematic client during the morning safety briefing. She had interrupted his presentation. "I've always found it fascinating how quickly nature can turn from serene to savage. The story of Monica and that Florida lagoon, it's a stark reminder." She apparently dismissed warnings about alligator nesting season, even threatening legal action when a guide tried to enforce safety protocols. She claimed her legal background made her smarter than a swamp guide. Park rangers tried to explain the dangers, but she saw it as government overreach. The timing was the worst possible, peak alligator breeding season, when the males are at their most aggressive, guarding their nesting areas. Access is usually restricted then, warning signs posted. American alligators are formidable, apex predators. Adult males can reach 14 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds. Their bite force? Over 3,000 pounds per square inch. They have 74 to 80 razor-sharp teeth. They can stay still for hours and then explode into action. Tommy, the guide, repeatedly warned her to stay within the channels because of the nesting season. The park had signs everywhere around the known nesting sites, but Monica grew belligerent, accusing him of limiting her constitutional rights. She broke away from the tour, paddling her kayak toward a restricted lagoon, clearly marked with warnings. She wanted to investigate some wildlife activity, claiming she had every right as a tax-paying citizen. That lagoon was a primary nesting area for a massive 12-foot bull alligator, defending his territory for 3 weeks. This 800-pound reptile had already driven off smaller males. Monica's kayak triggered his most aggressive instincts. He detected the vibrations from her paddle strokes almost instantly. He'd been resting motionless beneath the surface, camouflaged. The attack was swift. The 800-pound predator launched from the water, jaws clamping onto the front of her kayak. It capsized immediately, throwing her into the murky water right in front of the enraged reptile. As she struggled, disoriented, the alligator saw her as a threat. His jaws found her torso, teeth puncturing her life jacket, deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite shattered ribs, punctured lungs, severed blood vessels. Then came the death roll, the violent spinning to disorient prey and cause internal trauma. The alligator rotated rapidly, spinning her body while maintaining his grip. It tore muscles, caused catastrophic injuries. The death roll continued for over a minute. Her punctured lungs filled with water, and the crushing press made breathing impossible. Her shattered ribs ground against each other, causing more internal bleeding. The trauma, the drowning, the blood loss. It was fatal within minutes. Her struggles stopped as the alligator continued its roll. He eventually released her lifeless body, which floated to the surface. Tommy radioed for help, but it was too late. It was May 14, 2017. Meanwhile, in Great Smoky Mountains National Park, the ancient mountains rose above the Tennessee landscape, their peaks shrouded in mist. The late spring afternoon was perfect for hiking. Sunlight filtered through the trees and wildflowers carpeted the forest floor. Sarah Johnson, a 29-year-old nurse from Atlanta, was hiking with her fiancé Tom, celebrating their engagement. She loved nature photography, always taking her camera to capture memories. Her medical background gave her practical knowledge of emergencies, but she had limited experience with dangerous wildlife. She'd been hiking throughout the Southeast for 5 years, building her confidence. She worked long shifts at Grady Hospital's emergency department. These mountain getaways were essential stress relief. That afternoon, they were hiking through a remote alpine meadow when they saw 2 black bear cubs playing in the tall grass. Their mother was nowhere in sight. Sarah knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime photo. Black bears are the most common bear species in North America. But it's a chilling fact that a mother bear with cubs is exponentially more aggressive than a solitary one. They will attack without warning. They see any human presence near their young as a mortal threat. I've read accounts of their strength and speed. They can run up to 30 miles per hour through dense forest. It's hard to imagine until you hear a story like this one. Sarah and Tom were on an engagement trip, seeking adventures and incredible memories. They certainly found one, though not the kind they imagined. Sarah, spotting some adorable bear cubs, began photographing them. She thought she was at a safe distance, but as she got more and more excited, capturing what she must have felt was rare footage, she gradually moved closer. Tom, wisely, repeatedly urged her to keep her distance and leave the area. But Sarah was convinced the mother bear wasn't nearby. The cubs, oblivious to the danger, continued their playful wrestling in the meadow grass. Sarah documented their every move. The photography session went on for nearly 10 minutes. She captured dozens of images. Sarah's fatal mistake was positioning herself between the cubs and their natural escape route to the forest. As she moved, trying to get a better angle, she unknowingly blocked the path the cubs would take to reach safety if they felt threatened. And that triggered the protective instincts of their mother, who had been watching from the tree line. The mother bear's charge from the forest was swift and terrifying. This 200-pound female covered the distance to Sarah in mere seconds. Her powerful legs propelled her massive frame with surprising speed. Her territorial fury was focused entirely on eliminating what she perceived as a threat to her cubs. Sarah tried to retreat when she saw the charging bear, but her foot caught on a fallen log. She tumbled backward, still clutching her camera. The mother bear reached her before she could regain her footing, striking her with bone-crushing force. The bear's massive paw connected with Sarah's back. Her razor-sharp claws raked across Sarah's spine and shoulders, and the impact shattered several ribs. Sarah's camera flew from her grip as the bear's enormous weight pinned her to the ground. Her attempts to call for help were silenced by the crushing press on her chest. The mother bear's powerful jaws clamped down on Sarah's neck, her crushing bite fracturing vertebrae and severing vital arteries. The bear's protective instincts drove her to continue the assault until she was certain the threat to her cubs had been completely eliminated. Within minutes, Sarah's movement ceased. The mother bear's brutal assault proved fatal. The protective mother remained near Sarah's body for several more minutes, ensuring the threat was neutralized before gathering her cubs and disappearing into the dense forest. Park rangers arrived over an hour later in response to Tom's emergency call, but Sarah was already dead from massive trauma. The bear family was tracked but left undisturbed, as wildlife officials determined the mother had been acting within normal protective behavioral patterns when defending her young. Sarah's death devastated the hiking community and prompted enhanced educational programs about wildlife safety and proper distance protocols. Her family established a foundation promoting wilderness safety education, ensuring her passion for conservation would continue through enhanced protection for both wildlife and outdoor enthusiasts.